Great. Welcome to panel. Vikram, I'm going to turn it over to you, but one thing that I'm mystified that your name of your company has a G in it, and those of you who are not familiar with the Indian culture, G is a sign of respect, mostly associated with name, but it opens up all kinds of possibilities, so take it from here, Vikram. Thank you.
Thank you so much, PK. I won't get into a long explanation of why the name of the company is what it is. We'll leave it for another moment. But thank you all so much for being here. It's always such a pleasure to come here to the University of Santa Cruz and to this campus and to have a conversation. And it's always increasingly becoming such a great pleasure to talk about the nature of the relation between India and the United States and to see the optimism and the dynamism and the trust that now seems to exist in this entire relationship. But in this session, we're going to talk about something else that is very clearly dominating a lot of attention, dominating headlines, getting everyone talking about it. And I'm talking, of course, about AI. And that seems to be all that anyone's talking about these days. So much so that we were telling Rekha just yesterday that AIMA, well, the way to really get a lot more value out of that name is to just make it AI.ma, right? Yeah. And, or AIMA.ai, one of those. And it's suddenly this, you'll be seen as being really the front runners of a lot of transformation in management. So in this panel, I'm going to take advantage of the fact that we do have some of the leaders in this entire field who can help us understand a little bit of what's happening. And then we link it together with the broader themes of the conference. Well, how does the US and India work together in this? What are some of the challenges? Where can cooperation come from? How can we ward off some of the threats? But before that, I do want to pick your brains a little bit and use that expertise to help us understand. And frankly, speaking on behalf of the AIMA delegation, this trip has really been a lot about learning about AI, trying to figure out what exactly is happening, because this is what seems to be the hub of it. So great to have with us Shankar Trivedi, of course, Senior Vice President, Enterprise Business at NVIDIA, which is often described as the most influential and one of the most powerful and certainly one of the leaders in AI, perhaps the company which is putting a lot of this together. David Hausler is a distinguished professor, biomolecular engineering at the UC Santa Cruz. I'm going to be also picking on your brains to tell us whether AI is going to help in transforming everyone's healthcare and life, and is there going to be bioengineering happening at a massive level? And Gopal Krishna is a segment business head, major markets, North America for TCS, which of course is one of the most powerful Indian companies leading the IT revolution. And is that now going to become an AI revolution? Well, we're going to try and find out. But Shankar Trivedi, can I just start off with you, seeing as you and NVIDIA are increasingly becoming synonymous with AI across the world. Tell us a little bit about it. Are we still at the early stage of the curve? How far is this going to go? To what extent is it's clearly now seen, it was being spoken about as a possible revolution. Now it very clearly is a revolution. How far is it going to go?
So the answer is we are still in the early days, and first of all, I want to thank everybody, especially AIMA, for you've come and visited us so many times over the years, and it's so nice that you're back again, and we're engaging with all of the leaders, so we are, of course, a very important driver of AI. But I always remind people that we are the smallest company, and we are the AI company that works with all AI companies. That's the key point. So I think AI is in the early days still, but here's the important thing. It is changing every single industry and every single domain, every single process. And it's got, and I'll leave it to Professor to talk about bio, but that presence and that impact is inexorable and is going to continue significantly over the next few years. But it's still in the early days. And the single most important thing given that AI is really software writing software, at its core, it's software writing software. The software, turns text into poetry, or in his case, molecules into molecules. You feed it a molecule, give you another molecule. Incredible. The computer is doing the work. And so we have this notion of an AI factory. An AI factory is taking energy, power, electric power, and data, and converting it into intelligence. And then, of course, that intelligence has to be deployed over the air or over a private network into your own company or your domain or your process. And I think once everyone gets that, we move from, my friends at TCS or others would say, from not just IT into OT. And when we think about a factory, then you're moving from spending money to making money. That's what a factory does. And so I want to kind of make sure that we're all thinking like this. If indeed we have moved from IT into OT, then every company is a digital company. Every company is a tech company. And the AI industry is, to a large extent, the global economy. Every government institution, I'm looking at our Consul General, every government institution, every laboratory, every company is a digital company, an AI company, And so that's the perspective we have on this.
I just wanted to say that, there has been AI winters in the past. There have been lots of times, if you look at the last 30 to 40 years, AI is coming, it's going to transform everything. And then at some point, the hype sort of starts to fizzle out.
The important thing that happened, Vikram, is that computing became 1 million times more powerful in the last few years. 1 million times more powerful. The reason it was a winter, when it was a winter, was because the computers were powerful, but just not powerful enough to do what we're trying to make them do.
And they didn't have NVIDIA GPUs.
Well, we just happened to, anyway.
But talking about, that's an interesting way of looking at it, and I'm going to dive further into a lot of what you said. But Gopal Krishna, if I could turn to you, software writing software. For a company like TCS, I mean, if you look at the entire nature of the Indian technological revolution, or the Indian IT revolution for the last 20 years, which is also what has led to this entire synergies between the US and India and led to what's been happening here at Silicon Valley also. It's often been Indians writing the software before the software started writing the software. So does that prospect fill you with optimism or concern?
So first of all, Rekha, thank you very much for calling me here. And I took morning flight and landed here at 12:30. And I was thinking that, AI is so much hype. And I'm going to a conference where I have to talk about what AI is. And as my friend said, software is writing software. It with a lot of optimism that is the initial stage, but a lot of areas, a lot of work is happening. And although it is going to touch base all the segments, particularly if I talk about one particular area, it is basically healthcare, education, and manufacturing, if I have to name which are the leaders in using those segments where AI is making effective. But one particular area, if I talk about, is education. We have actually deep-rooted into this education using AI and how this is creating an impact for educators. Educators, if I talk about an Indian perspective, earlier used to spend about academicians about 45 to 55% on administrative tasks. So only they used to have around 45% or 50%, on a teaching. So that, on a preparation to classroom, to create content, create assessments, and so on and so forth. But today, that exactly has come down to approximately 20% or less than 20%. Just imagine the kind of impact it has created that they are spending more time on self-learning and creating a student that, what kind of a personalized learning I can do. So that data-driven thing, which software itself is giving an insight in a classroom of 30 students who are sitting. Whether I'm interested in mathematics, or I'm forcefully taken a mathematics, or I'm understanding some concept, or I require real-time feeds they are getting, which actually they are doing with a flipped classroom, the personalized interaction with student, and the student is doing so. So that's why if you see last 5 to 7 years, Indian students, the gradings has gone up significantly, whether you talk about the government colleges, schools, or private colleges and schools. So this is what is created. So I'm very optimistic that, and AI is going to be in future that, maybe 20, 15 years back, we used to talk about MS Office when it has come. All of us, we have created a lot of hype that, okay, it is very difficult, how we will use, what we will use. Now, we cannot live without MS Office. That is what is the AI in future.
Shankar Trivedi, before I come to the bio side of it, you must have been seeing some of the criticism in recent times that, look, we are investing hundreds of, billions of dollars in building out all this AI infrastructure, and all of these massive data centers have been set up. And obviously that's great news for NVIDIA and NVIDIA shareholders, but are the companies that are making all of this investment going to get a return on it? Those companies seem to be saying, we don't have a choice, we've got to do it, there's no other option. What is your own sense? Is all of this money which is going
I don't think that Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk are doing it just because they have to do it. They already know the business case, okay? And
it's a business case.
And they it needs to have invested public knowledge. This is public domain information, over 100,000. Now, Consul General spoke about India making the investment. Think about it, right? If what I said is correct, which I think it is, that data plus energy equals intelligence and affects everybody. Now you say, okay, if you're India, your data is a sovereign national resource, just like every other. It's an asset. And so now you need to put your data to use to create intelligence for your population, right? And that's what the government has decided to do with the National AI Mission and the India Stack. And in our AI summit, which we're having in Mumbai, it's only one of 3 global summits we're doing, 23rd to 25th October. Please do come if you're in Mumbai, 23rd to 20th. We are going to be showing with Government of India developers how Aadhaar is advanced in terms of fraud detection prevention, how Bhashini is using this AI stack, how UPI for the transactions are being accelerated. And this is adding real value today in India. And I think the business case is very, very clear for each of these particular use cases. So I think whether somebody wants to invest in the case of India, the equivalent of 10,000 GPUs per year, or 100,000, or maybe 1 million. That's each company has its own choice. Tata's have made a significant investment. Reliance has made a significant investment. Adani is looking at making significant investments, and these are based on solid ROI. In fact, I encourage everyone to do the ROI spreadsheet to start with.
Right, that's one way to. And you're right, it is being used extensively. It's being used in areas you don't even know. I mean, income tax, for example, these days in India, you start getting the income tax sending you an SMS by the end of the year saying, you have done 4,000 transactions, and this is probably what your tax should be. If you like, we'll start filling up your forms for you. And you may have not your tax, which you filled out last year, may not be entirely correct. Just go over it again.
And the US IRS has accelerated their data ingest and now is able to do, for us in the US, faster tax processing as a result.
Right.
Okay.
David Hassler, if I can turn to you now, if you're looking at the next waves, and I'm going to ask the panel, before we look at some of the geopolitical aspects of this, many people feel that the next wave, which is just starting, is what's going to be happening in biology, what's going to be happening with synthetic biology, what's going to happen with life, with biomolecular engineering, genetics. Is that Is that the next frontier now?
I think it's one of the next frontiers. Let me start by saying the AI winters. I got my degree in 1983 in machine learning and have been through AI winters. But this is different. This change is different. We reached a threshold. We genuinely did reach a threshold that none of us were sure would be reachable within our lifetimes. It's hard to describe to the average person what it means, but from my perspective, we found that the human conceptual scheme, our way of understanding the world, wasn't unique to our brain, but could be hacked by a computer system. And suddenly, many of us felt violated or threatened. But we see that having a machine that can conceptualize like we can, but also has instantaneous access to a vast amount of information and can be customized to our company's data, is an amazing assistant to us. So you think about this entity now, which is something that happened when we reached a certain scale and we didn't expect it, but it emerged. And this is also something that we see in physics and science all the time, the nonlinear emergence of new phenomena at a certain scale. So we reached a certain scale, and now we've crossed a threshold, and our interaction with computers, with the information in our world, is changing. You have to think of it as an enhancement and not as a replacement. And that's a very fundamental thing. We have, through our history, been enhanced by the technology we have created, starting with the steam engine. This is a unique enhancement, a cognitive enhancement that far surpasses any anticipated cognitive enhancement we have had before. Now, there are a number of companies talking about interface. So how can your brain interface with AI in the most efficient way? That is a boom area, and that is an interaction between the life sciences and AI. The second thing that happens in life sciences is that we have an issue where the fundamental principles of life are incredibly complicated. Physics, when you look at the history of a physical system, usually you don't need a lot of detail. Well, I boiled it, I mixed these chemicals, and therefore something could happen. And the whole system is encapsulated with something that a human brain can understand. But what happens in a single cell in your body is, I'm sorry to say, beyond your conception. It is far beyond the conception of any unaided human mind, because it is the product of 4 billion years of evolution. And therefore, a cell, one cell in your body, and all of the molecular interactions that are happening right now to keep you alive, is a system that is far, far beyond the comprehension and taming of any set of humans, unaided. But the speculation is now that if we enhance ourselves with this vast cognitive infrastructure that's been created by AI, that is capable of absorbing petabyte after petabyte of experimental data about the cells that make life possible, that together we can create a model which would really be predictive of how life works. So we are on the brink of an incredible change at this point. If we can use our current mental abilities, radically enhanced by AI, to understand ourselves, understand ourselves as living organisms, and then set about rationally approaching, well, how can we prevent cancer? How can we prevent Parkinson's, et cetera, et cetera? How can we make sure the ecosystem is robust? How can we make sure that climate change has a manageable effect? All of these questions require a better understanding of the life process. And this was moving on incrementally for decades. The whole history of biology has been one professor in their lab learning a little bit about one gene and how it might affect another gene. And I don't want to be discouraging to molecular biologists or biologists in the world, but that was never going to cut it in any type of time frame, because you cannot understand the whole, which is a billion-year achievement in engineering. Every cell in your body, you cannot understand that by isolated picking and experiments and so forth like that. We will only understand it in an integrated way, which would be profound. And I want to close by saying we've been talking about software designing software. Right now, software AI is designing other kinds of software, but the key thing we all have to keep in mind, and I'm not a radical doomer here, but the key thing we all have to keep in mind is at the point where AI starts actually writing and enhancing AI software. In other words, at the point at which AI is completely capable of building better AI, then we do enter into an exponential process which is unprecedented. You cannot deny this. And this process has to be controlled, and the democracies of the world have to be the ones in the driver's seat when this happens.
Or worrying about other people, or worrying about non-democracies that are potentially allowing this to happen unchecked, which is an even scarier phenomenon. But before I come back to that panel, then looking at the optimistic side, and then we start figuring out some of the challenges. If you look at techno-optimists, right, some of what you're describing, you read the people who've been writing about singularity theory, you talk to a Peter Diamandis or a Ray Kurzweil, their latest predictions seem to be that by 2030, it's not that far away actually, you will more or less stop aging. You'll have longevity forever. Cancer is gone. Everything's over. Unlimited energy for all time to come. Are you in? You said you're not a doomer, but are you in that optimistic a camp?
No, I'm not in that optimistic a camp. So you can ride on some. Kurzweil can ride on some amazing predictions, but it's very unlikely to pan out
for
that
a singularity. I mean, AI is moving reasonably fast.
It's very unlikely to pan out that way. Even his 2045 prediction, I'm not 100% with that, but it is possible, and it's certainly not. If there is some kind of singularity like Kurzweil predicted back, and of course I.J. Good and others predicted that much earlier. Then it may not be a gentle event, and it's something we have to be very, very, very capable, very careful about, and we have to build the capacity to control the beast that we have unleashed. There's no question about that. But I think it's important that we not think of AI as a replacement for us, but an enhancement for us, and that we be willing to be partners with AI. And that would mean, very strong mental partners and share a foundation. We need to establish a foundational truth that can be accepted across societies and that is accessible as a brain enhancement immediately.
Right,
so that we can operate cognitively.
Shankar, I mean, it's fine to say we should try and ensure that it is an enhancement of us, not a replacement of us. But in the sort of scenarios that were being described right now, what you called the factories of intelligence that are being built, there are a number of people who are expressing concern about this. We have, by the way, heard that concern extensively even in this short visit to Silicon Valley. You can call it science fiction, maybe it is science fiction, but the possibility of AI enhancing AI and it happening at an exponential rate, and then suddenly you get a super intelligent sort of an intelligence, which is then an existential threat, is the concern that people are talking about. Now, you at NVIDIA are probably more closely connected to this entire ecosystem. Is that a risk? Is that a threat? Is that something we should worry about?
I'm probably not the right person to answer this question because I'm a very practical, person, and I work. Basically, my job is to work with companies to solve real problems, and I'm not in the business of speculating what might or might not happen in the future. I go into a company and I say, well, how can we help you make a domain-specific large language model that solves a real problem that helps you make real money right now? Now, obviously we're in the center of it, and we have to steer it, but it's very difficult to make predictions about where this might go. And I think the job of managing the direction and the type of use and the ethics is actually best left to our regulators and legislators. And I always remind people that we actually have regulation and legislation for all the business processes that we currently work with. It exists right now. And we should enhance those regulations to incorporate this new phenomenon of AI. Right? And of course, people are saying, let's write AI legislation. Well, actually, you can look at your existing regulation and update it to incorporate new technology. So that's my perspective on this.
Gopal Krishnaji, on the point of, okay, so that's existential risk in one way. The other thing is, how do you continue to make sure that it's enhancement and not replacement, including when it comes to jobs, including when it comes to unemployment, including, I mean, it sounds really great to say that AI is going to do all the work and everyone can just relax and have a good time. It could tend to get a little bit boring, perhaps after a certain period of time, or disruptive, or chaotic, or all of the above.
So a lot of talk about job displacements or unemployability that AI will take because it will automate tasks. So a lot of jobs will take in. But if you'll go back, we had typewriters and we used to have a lot of typists. Okay, so those typists, where they have gone? They have actually enhanced. They learned computers and they started typing those letters in the computer. They used to have a physical system, what they used to make letters, now they are doing in a digital system. So training and upskilling is a main important aspect in this aspect, rather than worrying about that job will go away, entire AI will take over human job. Who has created, what is AI actually does? It automates tasks. Who created AI? Human. That is, a human intelligence has actually created artificial intelligence. I don't think we should worry. Only it will actually complement us. As I give an example of education as a sector, teacher as a person who is actually doing a transfer of knowledge to students, their prime work is to transfer the knowledge and student enhancement rather than doing an administrative job. Those administrative jobs, the time what is consumed by a human, what they are not supposed to do, which is AI actually is doing. That is what is actually is going to be the future.
All right, that's fantastic. Yeah. You want to add something to that?
Just quick comment. I think we have to separate the end of the doomsday argument where the AI takes over and rules us all from the first part of the AI argument, which means AI writing better AI. That creates a very fast innovation. And the problem you should think about from a business point of view is that innovation something you can keep up with? Is it something we can cope with? If the scale of technological process suddenly accelerates tenfold and then tenfold again, are our social systems ready to handle that? Or will it lead to warfare? Or will it break the trust? We're not used to operating on a scale of technological progression that is anything of that scale. And if anything I'm saying now to get through, scale matters, right? Scale is fundamental. And if you enhance the time scale by 10, but you have social systems and so forth, which are still operating at the old clock rate, we may be in trouble. So that's the first thing. And that's, from your thinking about your business strategy, like how can I cope with this if indeed AI will be 10 times better next year? Can I cope with that speed of change? And that's something we all have to think about.
Right, let's just turn to some of the geopolitical aspects of this. There's this entire question of whether there's going to be some sort of international competition. The US versus China. Is someone going to corner it? Could there be bad actors in individual countries? Of course, one of the concerns. But that is obviously something that is also, a very clear paradigm shift that is happening. Mr. Shankar Trivedi, NVIDIA, for example, has been facing that certain chips that you're not allowed to sell to China. How do you see that? Do you think this is something which is going to continue to happen? Will there be democracies which will work together in trying to build an AI system, and therefore which will be differentiated from what countries like China and others might be doing? Two different camps here.
I mean, clearly the world has moved from, accelerating globalization to a divergence. And I think we are kind of today faced with the reality that there are two parallel, internets, two parallel global economies, two parallel spheres of influence. And our job as NVIDIA is to conform to the letter and the spirit of the law, which in this case is United States law. So we are very, very clear on that. Having said that, and it affects me personally because I've built a very strong team and a very strong business personally in China. The head of our China business's last name is Pandey. Pandey, all right? Okay, and so I always kind of emphasize we have fabulous Chinese customer relationships. We have fabulous employees in China, and we have fabulous personal relationships with the Chinese people. And I think we're all humans. So we want to be truly globalist, but it's our job to conform to the letter and spirit of the law within the current political dynamics. And the reality is where it's becoming, at this point of time, more separate than more together.
More separate than work together. Gopal, does that throw up opportunities for the India-US relationship out here?
That for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of opportunities and I think a lot of work is already happening. Already Consul General has actually presented in his presentation, whether he presented towards the educational side, the universities collaboration like IITs here, Stanford, and all those collaborations anyway happening in a big way. Even enterprises, so large enterprises of US who are actually started their AI factories in India, right? The very strong relationship. And going forward, this relationship will only going to make better use of AI to set up the ethics and all other stuff, so that, it was not going to create a fear in human unless until we have this kind of global collaboration. All the countries will come together, like India and US anyway is doing a lot of things, but all the global ethics should have happened that, otherwise, as David said, that, more fear, more use of technology, fear in human mind will be there rather than actual usage of that.
Let me give you three specific huge opportunities for India as a result of what's currently happening. So the first is the China Plus One, right? And in India, we have the Make in India initiative and the PLI, which the Consul General described. You can think about huge movement of global supply chains into the manufacturing sector in India. It's evident, go around Chennai and Gujarat, incredible. And notice, these factories will not be built in the old way. They'll be built by Foxconn and Wistron and Pegatron and Flex and Jabil and people like that in a very modern, AI-enhanced factory, probably with a digital twin of the factory. Huge opportunity. And Tata's, by the way, are massively leading. Chandra is massively leading. They are manufacturing LLMs and so on in TCS and TCL. Second major huge opportunity for India. Estimated 80% of the global 1,000 have what is called a global capability center in India. We used to call them 5-10 years ago GRCs, Global Research Centers, and now apparently they're Global Capability Centers. And each one of these is a primary center. You know, Shell Center, I don't know if you've visited in Bangalore, it has a refinery, it has a huge supercomputer over there, and the best researchers in Shell are actually in this Global Capability Center, just to give one example. And think of it for 800 such, you know, capability centers producing intelligence in an AI factory kind of way, right? Whether it's, you know, so that's the second. The third is in the area of sovereign, right? So the country's data, which is our language, our culture, is now being converted into intelligence. And can you imagine the India digital you know, stack, which we're all proud of, you know, UPI, Aadhaar, etc., enhanced with this multilingual capability, truly unique in India, where you can actually mix and match the languages and still get the gist of what's going on, enhancing individuals as well as companies, fostered by the National AI Mission. I think that's going to open up tremendous startup and economic opportunities for not just the local economy, but via our global systems integrators into the global, you know, what we call India for the world, right? When I sit down with Chrissy and people, you know, I actually say, what's your India for the world strategy, right? As against India for India strategy. Mm-hmm. So those are three concrete examples happening today.
Can I potentially throw a fourth one, which I'm sure, you know, the Tatas and others are considering? And by the way, NVIDIA would probably be worrying about it a lot, right? You know, those TSMC, most of the chips being made by TSMC, which is just across the Taiwan Strait from China, which is constantly, you know, running ships down there and flying. And considering as you're having war in Ukraine and Russia and now Gaza, that's a very real concern. What happens to NVIDIA's entire supply chains and everyone else's supply chains if something happens to TSMC. Yeah. So perhaps putting a TSMC factory in nicely and safely somewhere in Chennai would be something which I'm sure you'd be talking to them about. Keep it far away from China.
Absolutely. So, I mean, yeah, a lot of a group level, a lot of things are happening in this particular aspects. Chennai, Assam, Gujarat, these are the places, Karnataka. So these are the states which we are expanding and new generation factories which are setting up. And this is going to definitely enhance the productivity more.
So NVIDIA chips being designed out here and manufactured potentially.
This is actually what I said was the first point, which was everyone has to have a China plus one supply chain strategy. And so we don't actually make, because ourselves, we don't have our own fabs and so on, but we want to enable that ecosystem, whether it's a TSMC, Tata's own fabs, Pegatron, a Wistron, a Foxconn, Samsung, Micron, all are part of our supply chain. And we want to activate that, and we want them to establish the right infrastructure in India to service not just the Indian market, but actually the global market.
All right, we're reaching the end of this session, but perhaps I just wanted to bounce one last thing off you. In this entire new world where AI is happening and collaboration is happening, coming to the intellectual partnership and the intellectual, you know, sort of, if you're doing biotech research and AI is doing it, it should be also very possible to partner a lot with Indian institutes and use the wealth of talent that is out there. So you can run it as a 24-hour factory, right? Work happening in the day out here, then when people go to sleep out here, there are teams in India which are continuing the work. Is that something you see happening more and more?
Well, this project to crack the code of life, to understand how a single cell actually operates as the most complicated system we know in the universe at this point, should be an international project. There is no question
A really great
about
example of this is, what's happening in IIT Madras with Chris Gopalakrishnan and setting up the Brain Institute and having, 100-year-old person's brain as well as, it is a global resource for all neuroscientists and all brain research. That's just one example of the incredible kind of work that we can do working with the Indian healthcare ecosystem.
Absolutely. Even IIT Kharagpur is doing a thing on that. They started a medical school, and they're doing a lot of research-based medicine teaching. So that is also a great collaboration one can have. And as rightly you mentioned, the way software industry is actually used, that offsite, on-site, offshore model kind of a thing. The same thing can be done so that we can have an optimum utilization of the time. When people are sleeping here, people can work there, and people are sleeping there, people can work here.
Well, these are exciting times. These are dramatic frontiers. We'll be back next year, and who knows to what extent all of this will have happened. We may well have, AI-enabled questions happening out here. So it makes it life much simpler. Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.